So the other big part of the class will be lab. So we will meet every Wednesday for lab in room 124 of the science building at 1 to 3 p.m., including this Wednesday, this first week. We'll be meeting at 1 p.m. You will need to bring personal protective equipment. So you will definitely need, you have to wear goggles. If you go to the bookstore beforehand, you get goggles from the bookstore along with that CHEM 101 code. So I definitely encourage you to go to the bookstore before our first week of lab. You also need to wear closed-toed shoes, usually not an issue in January, but as it starts to warm up, you cannot wear sandals to lab. If you wear sandals, unfortunately, I cannot let you do the lab activity. And then anything else you wish to use. If you want to bring any, if you want to bring gloves, coats, anything like that, more than welcome to wear masks. But you definitely need to have goggles and closed-toed shoes. You're going to be working in assigned lab groups, so I will assign those lab groups when you come in on Wednesday. You'll meet your lab partners. That's kind of part of the first week, is meeting lab partners and figuring things out, all that sort of fun stuff. For the lab kind of functionally, everything will be posted in Blackboard, so it'll be under the week. So in week 1, there's the week 1 lab. In week 2, there's the week 2 lab, and so on and so on. And those handouts are there's handouts in there that contain information on the lab activity, and then there's kind of 4 assignments that make up each lab, and all of them are hosted on Blackboard. Some of them you will complete on Blackboard, others you'll just turn the assignment in on Blackboard. So it's a pre-lab, technique comprehension, and lab notebook. These you will do either before the lab on Wednesday or at the lab, depending on who you are, and that'll rotate. And then the post lab will be due Sunday post the lab. So there's 4 parts to each lab. Some of them you do beforehand, some you do afterwards. Kind of grading the pre-lab, technique, lab notebook, post-lab, that's your weekly parts of the lab. So each week you'll be doing these. They're parts of the lab that'll make up, collectively that makes up 60% of your lab score. And then you'll have 2 end of semester components to the lab score as well, kind of like the final assignments of the lab that you're kind of doing. And so that's kind of the overview lab. Let's take a look at what it looks like actually in Blackboard. Oh, whoops. All right, so if we're in Blackboard and we go to, I'm actually going to exit this. Okay, so week 1, where we're at right now, we're going to be doing this endothermic versus exothermic lab. So if you click in here, you'll note there is this lab handout and there's this guidance on the lab notebook, but you'll note the lab notebook's not coming soon. This will basically for this first week, you just need to come to class on Wednesday. Come to class, come to campus on Wednesday. We'll work through everything there and I'll talk more about the lab. This is kind of an intro lab where we're kind of learning some of the parts of the lab, getting to know our lab partners, all that sort of fun stuff. So then instead, to look at what a real lab would look like if we go to week 2, when we do this evaporation intermolecular forces lab, there's a lot more to the lab. So there's the lab handout. This is basically going to contain all of the information, background information, how to do the lab procedure, all of these processes, data tables that you need to fill out, post-lab questions you need to answer, kind of working through all of this. There's a pre-lab. This is an assignment that you can do, that you will need to do, answering questions from the lab handout. And then there's this comprehension quiz that's talking about a technique. So this is a YouTube video of someone else, not me, talking about how to do a technique from this lab. So you can watch Melissa Hill talk about this process and going through just some of the ideas. The idea is that the idea is you're watching this to learn how to do some of the techniques that we're going to show up in the actual lab activity, and then you can take this comprehension quiz. You have as many times you want to complete this, so we'll go through it. We'll go ahead and just do this. Begin, and I'm just going to answer some of these. I'm not necessarily, I'm not trying to get the right answers. I'm just trying to get answers. Can I get an answer? And then I'm just going to submit it. Okay, whatever. Okay, view my results. You can see I didn't do that well. So I got every single answer wrong. Randomly guessing is not a good strategy. It's telling me what all the possible answers were and what my answer was, and I can see it's wrong. And so, okay, no good. If I go back into here, I see that I can take it again. I can retry this one as many times as I want. So because it is a technique, I can do that one as many times as I want. Pre-lab, you get one chance. These are questions that generally you can look in the lab handout. This comprehension is based upon this for questions that you can find in the pre-lab questions you can find in the lab handout. The technique is questions in the video. It's all for that. So all of this is going to be due at the start of lab. So before lab starts, you want to be completing all of these parts. The lab notebook I can't make until the course starts. You would also be filling out those parts. So these are the parts you're doing before the lab. And again, these many parts of the lab, they're all there. You don't need to have them memorized now. I'm going to send out multiple reminder emails. Don't worry, and we'll talk about this again. You always just can look back at that reference. There's documentation as to how all of that stuff works. So two things I want to mention about that end of semester stuff. Don't need to worry too much about it right now. Just want to make sure you're aware. You're going to be making a presentation at the end of the semester about how to do a lab technique. So you're going to watch a lot of videos of other people talk about lab techniques. You're going to make your own. You can make a video. You can present it live. There's going to be a ton of variety, a ton of options. You can do it. Basically, it'll make up a 20% of your lab grade, so it's 5% of your total overall grade. Not a huge part, but also not trivial. So it's not a huge assignment, but just kind of showing off some of the things. I want you to make a presentation, make a video, and then you'll also make complete a lab final. Basically, the last week of lab, or second to last week of lab, you'll come in and you'll work through some basically just assignments, just covering practical and theoretical skills that we did this semester. These are not meant to be overly difficult. This is meant to kind of focus on topics or techniques that we used multiple times throughout the semester. So techniques that we did multiple times throughout the semester, I want to see, can you do them again? And especially things, it's mostly going to be topics that we talk about in lecture and in lab, practical kind of considerations for those ideas. But otherwise, once those things once we get closer to those topics, I'll also make additional videos. There'll be additional resources, additional references about all of that stuff, because of course there will be. So that's all in there. If you have any questions about lab or anything, let me know. The most important thing, come to campus on Wednesday, the 12th at 1 p.m. It's room 124 of the science building with goggles and closed-toed shoes, and we'll be ready to go talk about all that fun stuff then. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we are working our way to the end of information about the class.